The glass shattered so violently that the sound seemed to rip through the morning air like a scream. In the top-floor penthouse of a shining, cold skyscraper, a porcelain teacup slipped from trembling fingers and exploded against the marble floor. Bitter, dark liquid splashed across white tiles like spilled blood. The woman standing there swayed as if the ground underneath her had suddenly turned to water, her breath coming in broken gasps, her vision narrowing. And behind her, unnoticed, a man in a faded blue janitor's uniform froze, mop in hand, staring at the reflection of fear in the polished walls. If you are watching Ripple of Love and believe that hope, compassion, and second chances can change even the coldest hearts, like, comment, share, and subscribe right now, because this story will stay with you longer than you expect. Her name was Selmara Voss, though the world knew her only as a mystery wrapped in money. The tabloids called her the sick millionaire, endlessly fascinated by her pale beauty, her fading public appearances, and the rumor that she might not live another year. She lived above the clouds, in a home filled with glass walls, white silk curtains, and expensive silence. But no one knew the truth of that silence. It wasn't peace. It was grief that had hardened into something sharp and painful. Years ago, she had lost everything that made her human, starting with a child she had never been allowed to hold for more than a few seconds before machines stole him away. From that moment, her body had begun to betray her, or at least that was what she believed. Doctors came and went, hands clean, voices confident, prescriptions endless. But the sickness never left. It clung to her like a shadow. And then there was him. Rami Calder. A single father, a cleaner with tired eyes and a soul worn thin by responsibilities too heavy for any one man. He scrubbed floors for a living, pushed trash carts through luxury hallways where laughter echoed from lives he would never live. His hands were cracked from chemicals, his shoulders stooped not from age but from carrying invisible weights. He woke up every morning before the sun just to pack lunch for his 9-year-old daughter, Naira, who believed her father was a hero even when the world treated him like dust. Rami didn't believe in miracles. He believed in surviving. That was all. That morning, the skyscraper shimmered under the sun like a blade. Selmara stood by the window when the cup slipped. Her eyes widened in terror not because of the broken porcelain, but because of the familiar darkness creeping at the edges of her sight. She felt it again, that cold hand around her chest, squeezing slowly. Rami stepped forward instinctively, abandoning training, logic, fear. He saw her sway, saw the weakness in a woman who was rumored to be made of steel. Without thinking, he steadied her by the arm. Her skin felt cold, like marble left in winter shade. Over the next weeks, a strange, silent rhythm formed. Rami cleaned while Selmara lived, and sometimes collapsed into herself when she thought no one could see. He began to notice patterns that doctors hadn't. He saw how she barely touched her food, how her hands trembled only when certain sounds reached her ears, how the rooms she avoided were always the ones that held mirrors. He wasn't educated, he wasn't rich, but he was a father, and fathers notice pain. He had spent years learning Naira's silent cries, her fears, her tiny heartbeats when fevers threatened to take her. Something about Selmara's sickness felt familiar. It wasn't the body. It was the soul, screaming too loud. Midday sunlight poured through the penthouse in soft gold waves, painting everything warm while Selmara felt nothing but cold inside. She sat on a velvet couch, staring at a photo frame that held nothing but dust. Rami cleansed the glass slowly, pretending not to see the way her fingers trembled. He felt the air grow thick, heavy, like a storm forming indoors. He remembered his own nights, sitting beside Naira's bed when she had nearly died from pneumonia, begging a silent ceiling to let her live. He remembered how the fear had eaten him alive, how it still lived in his chest every day. And that is when he saw it. Hidden in a half-open drawer. Medical files that none of the famous doctors had ever mentioned aloud. Therapy records, trauma notes, sealed letters from a hospital that no longer existed. The truth was sitting there in fragile paper. Selmara was not dying from an illness of the body. She was suffocating under a lifelong untreated psychological collapse, built from grief, abandonment, and the quiet cruelty of being told to be strong while her world broke. Her sickness was a wound that had never been allowed to bleed or heal. Rami felt something break inside him. Not pity. Not anger. Recognition. From that day forward, he stopped seeing her as a millionaire. He saw her as a human being drowning in invisible water. Days passed under bright skies and open curtains. He began to make small changes in the rooms while cleaning. He let more sunlight in. He left windows cracked open so air could move. The penthouse slowly stopped feeling like a tomb and started to feel like a place where life might return. Selmara began to notice. She stood longer in sunlight. She breathed deeper. She started touching warm cups instead of cold ones. None of it was spoken. Everything was felt. One afternoon, Selmara collapsed fully. Not from weakness, but emotional exhaustion breaking through her perfectly built walls. She sank to the floor, knees on marble, shoulders shaking. Rami didn't touch her this time. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. He sat nearby, pretending to sort cleaning supplies, but his heart thudded like thunder. He felt her grief hitting the air like invisible waves. And for the first time in years, she cried from a place deeper than fear. Near the end, before the final transformation of the heart, if this story is touching you, please comment and let us know how it makes you feel. Your words matter more than you think. The truth finally surfaced in the most unexpected way on a bright, quiet afternoon. Selmara received a letter she had ignored for a decade. It was from a small private clinic that had closed years ago, holding a delayed record release. Her child, the one she thought she lost forever, had not died that day. The child had been taken into a complex legal adoption after a series of manipulations and forged documents by people who wanted her vulnerable, dependent, controlled. Her sickness had never been physical. Her life had been stolen piece by piece. Rami found her sitting by the window, sunlight wrapping around her like a soft halo. Her face looked different. Not healed completely, but awakened. Tears rolled silently, not from pain, but from something fragile and bright. Hope. If this story of hidden pain, quiet heroes, and broken souls finding light has touched your heart, support it by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Your support makes stories like this breathe and live. In the final days of that season of her life, Selmara stepped outside her penthouse for the first time without fear. Daylight wrapped around her shoulders like a living thing. She walked through a small city park where children laughed, leaves shimmered, and wind moved like gentle music. Rami watched from a distance, holding his daughter's small hand, his heart fuller than it had been in years. He had not saved her with wealth. He had saved her with sight. And Selmara, the woman who had been labeled sick and broken, understood something that medicine had never taught her. Healing did not live in expensive bottles or sterile halls. It lived in connection. In being seen. In being understood. The millionaire was never cured by money, doctors, or silence. She was healed by the quiet strength of a single father who knew what it meant to live in fear and still choose kindness. And somewhere in the open air, under clear daylight, two souls carried on knowing that even the deepest wounds can soften when met with true humanity. The world did not change overnight. But something inside them did. And sometimes, that is enough to change everything.